In the 10th century, the Abbasid Caliphate nominally controlled a Sunni-dominated empire stretching from North Africa to Central Asia. But by this period, the central government in Baghdad faced mounting internal crises. This era left the Shia population increasingly marginalized. They maintained that leadership of the Muslim world belonged exclusively to the direct descendants of the Prophet Muhammad through his daughter, Fatima. As the Abbasid court struggled with military coups, their grip on the provinces slipped. This left populations in the outlying territories without stable governance and looking for a new source of security. Into this vacuum stepped a secret Ismaili movement. They operated through the Dawah, a highly organized network of missionaries who worked to dismantle the existing political order from the shadows. The Fatimids eventually built a thriving empire based on these religious ideals. But the pragmatic demands of maintaining a physical state would eventually test that religious unity. To secure a base of operations, the Fatimids deployed missionaries to North Africa. They recruited the Kutama Berber tribes, overthrew local governors, and established a territory that stretched from the Atlantic coast to Libya. By the 960s, they turned toward their main objective, Egypt. At the time, the ruling Ikhshidid regime was paralyzed by political infighting and a leadership vacuum. Environmental catastrophe made the country even more vulnerable. Years of low Nile floods decimated crop yields, leading to a severe famine that starved the population in the capital. Fatimid agents had already spent years preparing for this moment. They bribed Egyptian elites and promised the merchant classes that Fatimid rule would restore the stability needed for trade. When the white-bannered Fatimid army finally marched into Egypt in 969, they faced almost no resistance from the starving local garrisons. They took control of the country and immediately founded a new capital city, Cairo. The conquest was the culmination of years of ideological preparation. The Fatimids didn't win through a massive battle. They won because they had already convinced the Egyptian elites to accept their mandate. This is a Fatimid gold dinar. Its purity and wide circulation reflect an economy that connected Cairo to trade routes as far as Song China. The state invested heavily in intellectual infrastructure, such as the Al-Azhar Mosque and University. These institutions were designed to train missionaries and project Fatimid doctrine throughout the Muslim world. To keep the administration efficient, the caliphs employed Christians, Jews, and Sunnis in high government offices. This inclusive policy helped manage the empire's diverse population and growing bureaucracy. However, a structural flaw emerged as the empire grew. To defend these vast territories, the state could no longer rely exclusively on its original religious followers. The caliphs began recruiting large numbers of foreign mercenaries. The army became a collection of distinct ethnic factions, Turkish, Berber, and Sudanese troops, each with their own loyalties. To protect their ideological vision, the caliphs built a fragmented military machine. Eventually, that machine would begin to dictate terms to the state itself. By the late 11th century, power shifted to the viziers of the sword. These military strongmen stripped political authority away from the caliphs, turning the once divine leaders into figureheads. When another cycle of drought and famine decimated the treasury, the government could no longer pay its troops. Without pay, the Turkish, Berber, and Sudanese military factions turned on each other, triggering a civil war. This internal chaos splintered the Ismaili faith, dividing the community into separate sects, such as the Nizari and the Druze. In 1171, a Sunni commander named Saladin ended the dynasty. He abolished the Caliphate and restored Egypt's formal loyalty to the Abbasids without meeting any serious resistance. Internal fractures and pragmatic compromises ultimately ended the empire. The very systems that the Fatimids built to protect their state were the ones that caused its collapse. Fatimid rule changed Egypt's status in the region. It was no longer a provincial territory, but the seat of a universal empire that commanded trade and diplomacy across 2 continents. The physical proof of this era still defines Cairo today. Its skyline remains a dense landscape of domes and minarets left behind by the Fatimids. Their reign also provoked a Sunni revival. The threat of Fatimid expansion forced Sunni leaders to harden their doctrines and build new institutions, creating a theological divide that persists centuries later. The Fatimid cycle shows that while a revolutionary belief system can build an empire, the pragmatic realities of governing it will ultimately test the soul of that movement.